Part 46. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 452. Chapter 450 of the main text volume of Ruyi Little Man, a friend of yours. Lu Ya looked at Xiaoju, narrowed her eyes, and asked, she clearly likes someone, but she always bullies him. Xiaoju looked at her face. Based on his many years of experience in being beaten, whenever she narrowed her eyes, folded her fingers inward, and pressed her toes slightly, it meant that she was about to take action. His lips trembled. Actually, you also know my friend. Lu Ya suddenly smiled and asked, could this friend you are talking about be? That's right, Xiaoju nodded and said, she is Miss Tang. He looked at Lu Ya, sighed, and said, you said Miss Tang clearly likes Tang Ning and yet she always bullies him. Isn't this a disease? One of Lu Ya's legs relaxed, her fingers no longer closed together, and she said, one is happy to bully, and the other is happy to be bullied. There is no need for outsiders to comment. That's right, Tang Ning often said that hitting means kissing and scolding means loving. Otherwise, why would Miss Tang bully him instead of bullying others? Xiaoju shook his head and said, sit here for a while, I will help my father find chess pieces. In the study, Mr. Xiao was sipping tea leisurely. When he saw Xiaoju coming in, he put down the teacup heavily and asked, what did you come in for? Xiaoju explained, if I stay outside for a little longer, she will fight with me. Mr. Xiao said, if you could stay a little longer every time, I would have a grandson now. Xiaoju said in surprise, Dad, you are in good health, why are you so anxious to hold your grandson? Mr. Xiao sighed and said, I am in good health, are you in good health? Xiaoju looked at him and said, Dad, don't look down on me. I'll be fine a long time ago. Okay, Mr. Xiao became energetic and said, take off your pants and let me take a look. Xiaoju was startled, and subconsciously covered a certain spot. Although he had recovered, he still couldn't do such a thing as taking off his pants in front of others. Even if this person is his father. Seeing that he refused to cooperate, Mr. Xiao looked outside and said, here comes someone. When Xiaoju heard this, he didn't care about covering up and ran outside. Seeing him running past, Lu Ya stood up and quickly chased after him, saying, where are you going? Wait for me. Mr. Xiao stood up from his chair, his expression looking quite excited. After a while, he walked out of the study, looked at a servant in the yard, and said, Xiaofu, come here. Xiaofu immediately ran over and bowed, what are your orders, master? Mr. Xiao looked at him and said, tomorrow morning, get up earlier and go to the young master's room to have a look. Today is the first day of the 16th Guards competition. Each of the four groups A, B, C and D played a match. According to the arrangements of the Ministry of War, the first match was for the strongest team in each group to face the weakest one. Team, the result is naturally no suspense. The right feather guard defeated the right Xiao Ei, and the left and right golden feather guards also defeated their respective opponents to prepare for the next game. Only the left feather guard made no mistakes. Zhou Yue, who was regarded as the strongest among the 16 guards, lost to Zhou Xiao Ei, who was at the bottom of the 16 guards. It can be said that it shocked the jaws of countless people in the capital. It wasn't until they found out the details of today's competition that everyone's doubts were solved. Zhou Xiao Ei, who was not strong enough, actually took advantage of the chaos and pretended to be Zhou Yue on the court, stealing their flag by surprise. This led to Zhou Yue's defeat not long after the start. It is said that the captains of Zhou Yue jointly protested to the Ministry of War. Under pressure, the Ministry of War ordered that in future competitions, they were not allowed to impersonate their opponents, otherwise it would be considered a violation. The dates for the 16th Guards competition have long been posted on the door of the military department, and the major casinos couldn't even wait for the group stage to end, So they offered various handicaps. It's his grandma's fault. Zoya Wei actually lost to Xiaoqi Wei. Please pay for my money. I want to report it. They must have faked the match. Those bastards like Zoya Wei won't all buy it and lose. You didn't read the tactical analysis at the entrance of Tang Grenzai. In this competition, the cavalry guards used tricks. Next time, they won't be so lucky. Yes, the cavalry guard is the bottom among the 4 guards in Group A. Even if you win one game by chance and lose the next 2, it's still useless. The biggest news in the capital today is naturally that Zhou Xiaoyi defeated Zhou Yue in the big competition. Xiaoqi Wei defeated Yulin Wei. It sounds like a fantasy, but it did happen, and it made many people lose money. In the palace, Emperor Chen held a battle report in his hand and said in surprise, Zhou Yue actually lost. Wei Jian said, "Back to your majesty, I heard that Zhou Xiaoyi sent out a surprise force." Taking advantage of the chaos, he pretended to be Zhou Yue, went around to the rear, stole their commander's flag, and according to the previous rules of Dabi, lost the commander Qi. Even if he lost, Zhou Yue had a quarrel with the Ministry of War because of this. Chen Huangdao, if you lose, you lose. Today, the cavalry guards can pretend to be Yulin guards, and tomorrow the enemy's spies can also pretend to be. The imperial court does not raise these forbidden troops to participate in competitions every year. In the palace, Ling Yun knelt down on one knee and said, "Your Majesty, I am guilty." Chen Huang waved his hand and said, "Okay, didn't your Yulin guards lose to the Xiaoqi guards this time? It's not like Xiaoju came up with this method. Tang Ning must be behind it. He is full of tricks. Bad, strange move." Chen Huang thought of something and asked again, "I heard that he also helped train the cavalry guard." Wei Jian said, "He is a guard beside him. According to General Chen Zhonglang of the cavalry guard, he seems to know some military tactics." Emperor Chen asked, "Is there anything wrong with this person?" Wei Jian said, "The secret agents have already investigated. This person's surname is Zheng. He is a butcher. He has been selling meat in Lingzhou for more than 10 years. He started a family in Lingzhou in his early years. His wife died a few years ago. This year, he came to the capital to treat his daughter. It seems that he knows Lord Tang. Later, I don't know how he became a guard of the Tang family. He should be innocent. A butcher who knows how to train soldiers is also a talent." The secret agent department did not find any suspicious points in the investigation. Emperor Chen said casually and did not ask any more questions. He paused, and then said, "I heard that he also made something. What carp?" Wei Jian said, "Your Majesty, it's a koi. On the last day of the competition, they will draw one person from all the spectators on the scene and give him many gifts, calling him a koi. This gift list is very heavy, worth at least 10,000 taels of silver. If an ordinary family wins, it will be enough to live a worry-free life. 10,000 taels." Emperor Chen shook his head, his tone slightly complicated, and said, "Add the reward silver for the winner of the 16 guards, that's 20,000 taels. He is more generous than me." Tang Ning felt that he had a great advantage, that is, generosity. The koi gift list in the final of the 16 guards competition was very generous and had long been spread throughout the capital. These days, people have come to Tang Yao one after another, wanting to increase the gift list. Tang Ning just collected a suitable sponsorship fee from them and allowed the gifts from their stores to appear on the gift list. In addition to being generous, he is also very fair. Just now, he had righteously rejected Xiaoju's request to designate him as the lucky fish. This time, the lottery was supervised by the Ministry of War, and he didn't intend to do anything fake. The store's turnover has soared in the past few days, and with the sponsorship fees from those merchants, not counting the ticket sales, their investment has been recovered, so there is no need to do anything shady. At the Xiao family, on the dinner table, Xiaoju was still upset about Tang Ning's rejection of his proposal just now. When he looked up, he saw Xiao Gonggai looking at him and asked in surprise, "Dad, why are you looking at me?" "It's okay." Xiao Gonggai waved his hand and said, "Go back and rest early if you're full." Xiaoju didn't eat enough, but he felt very sleepy. He put down his bowl and chopsticks halfway through his meal and went back to his room to rest. When he opened his eyes again, he saw his quilt being lifted up, and Xiao Fu was standing by his bed, looking at a certain part of his body with a gleam in his eyes. Xiaoju stood up suddenly, subconsciously reaching out to cover that part, and shouted, "What do you want to do?" Xiao Fu ran out of the room quickly, shouting, "Master, the young master is up, the young master is up." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 453. The first day's competition was related to the cavalry guards and his silver. The next few competitions were not so important to Tang Ning. Zhao Man went to Xing'an Temple with Xiao Ru and Xiao Yi early in the morning, saying that she was going to fulfill a wish. She also said that the fortune-telling in that temple was particularly accurate and she wanted to go there to ask for another one. To show her sincerity, she also donated 1,000 taels of silver to the temple. Tang Ning thought about it. He spent a lot of effort to organize competitions, advertise, and draw koi. He worked so hard but still couldn't make as much as a temple outside the city. If there were 10 Zhao Mans, they would have 10,000 taels of silver in incense money. The price was just a few bamboo sticks and a few auspicious words. Making money was easier than robbing money. And he was the one who drew the koi fish and gave gifts. The people actually went to the temple to donate money for good luck. If he had known this would happen, he should have discussed it with the abbots in advance, and split the money equally, or simply applied to build a temple. Whether it was for marriage or career, all would be auspicious, so what business would he need to do? He had to go to the cavalry battalion to keep an eye on it today. Xiaoju had nothing to do today, so he didn't know if he went there. When he passed by the Xiao mansion, he heard faint screams coming from inside, but when he listened carefully, there were no more. Inside the Xiao mansion, Xiaoju got off Xiao Fu, panting, pointing at him, and angrily said, "Next time I see you just after waking up, I will strip you naked and hang you on the flagpole. Do you understand?" Xiao Fu, with a swollen nose and face, got up from the ground and said timidly, "I understand, I understand." Old Master Xiao changed his usual seriousness and walked over with a smile on his face. He looked at Xiaoju and asked, "Is it really okay?" Xiaoju said unhappily, "I was almost scared by Xiao Fu again." Old Master Xiao's face changed drastically, and he immediately said, "Do you want to find a maid for you to try?" "No need." Xiaoju waved his hands repeatedly and said, "I tried it myself, it's not broken. It's good if it's not broken, it's good if it's not broken." Old Master Xiao stroked his beard, smiling, and even his slightly bent spine straightened a lot. It is said that the son of the Xiao family is a playboy, and he has some hidden diseases, which is not as good as other children of the generals. But now his hidden disease has been cured, and he is no different from a normal person. At a young age, he is already a cavalry captain. Who else can compare with him among the military sons of the same age in Beijing? Since you are already well, Dad will ask someone to propose marriage to you. Old Master Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, "I wonder what excuses they have this time." Xiaoju has already reached the age of marriage, but for some reason, the families that are equal to the Xiao family have rejected the Xiao family's proposal, so that he has not yet started a family. At that time, he was very humble. Now, those people have no reason to refuse. No need. Xiaoju usually smiles in front of old Master Xiao, but when he said this, he was particularly serious. "Are you worried that they won't agree?" Old Master Xiao looked at him and waved his hand, saying, "If they don't agree, Dad will ask His Majesty to grant you a marriage, and your marriage will be settled this year." No. Xiaoju shook his head and said, I know my marriage, so I don't need to ask anyone. Old Master Xiao looked at him, finally nodded, and asked, tell Dad, do you have someone you like? Xiaoju thought about it and nodded slightly. Who is she? A hurried voice came from behind Xiaoju. Xiaoju looked at Lu Ya, shuddered, and said, what so and so, I'm going to the cavalry camp, bye. Stop. Lu Ya just opened her mouth, and old Master Xiao stopped her and said with a smile, he's going to his cavalry camp, yeah you stay here and play 2 games of chess with the old man. Lu Ya looked at Xiaoju's hurriedly leaving back, and finally just stomped her feet and walked to the chessboard in the yard. After playing a game of chess for a while, Mr. Xiao looked up at her and said, this game of chess is not your level, yeah you must not give in to the old man. No. Lu Ya's eyes wandered, and she said absent-mindedly, it's the old man's chess skills that have improved. Mr. Xiao picked up a chess piece but didn't put it down. He looked at her and suddenly said, there is something that the old man has been thinking about for a long time and wants to discuss with you. Lu Ya's eyes continued to wander, and she asked, what is it? Tell me, old man. You and Zhu are about the same age, and you haven't married yet. Mr. Xiao looked at her and smiled, I think you two are a good match. I want someone to go to the Lu family to propose marriage. What do you think? Lu Ya came back to her senses and said in a daze, ah. Mr. Xiao seeing her expression, he sighed and said, it's okay if you don't want to. I know that Zhu is spotty. No, I do, Lu Ya hurriedly said, I do. No matter what his body is like, I do. Mr. Xiao looked at her and asked, but your father? Lu Ya rolled her eyes and said, I can ask His Majesty to grant me a marriage. Even if my father doesn't want to, he can't disobey the imperial decree. Outside the courtyard, Xiaofu, with a bruised face, came over and saw Xiaoju leaning against the wall with his ear against the wall. He didn't know what he was doing. Just as he was about to speak, he was kicked down by him and covered his mouth. In the cavalry battalion, Tang Ning had just watched the competition between the left Yinkai Guard and the left Dongmen Guard. The Yinkai Guard was still slightly stronger, so the result of this game should not be suspenseful. He glanced casually and saw Xiaoju walking over in a trance. Tang Ning looked at him and asked, was he beaten by Lu Ya again? Xiaoju did not answer, but looked at him, thought for a while, and said, I seem to have fallen in love with someone. Then what? Then what do I do? Tang Ning looked at him speechlessly and said, if you like her, confess it and tell him that you like her. Do you have to wait for the girl to speak first? Xiaoju thought about it carefully, looked at him and asked, do you think she will hit me? Tang Ning looked at him and asked, isn't it Lu Ya that you like? Xiaoju nodded. When did you like her? Just now. It seems that Xiaoju has really found love. Tang Ning looked at him and said in surprise, don't you think she always beats you? Xiaoju thought for a while and said, to be honest, I quite like her beating me. One is willing to fight, the other is willing to suffer. Lu Ya meeting Xiaoju is like Zhou Yu meeting Huang Gai. This incident confirms 2 truths, love is blind and never makes sense, and, Xiaoju is indeed a Sheikh M. Tang Ning looked at him and said, since you like her, go and tell her what you are doing here. Xiaoju looked embarrassed and said, I don't know how. How about you teach me? Lu Mansion. Xiaoju paced in front of the Lu family's gate, his face hesitant, and he raised his head to look inside from time to time. At a certain moment, his shoulder was suddenly tapped from behind. Lu Ya crossed her arms, looked at him, and asked, what are you doing here? Xiaoju looked at her, startled for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, I have something to say to you. Just in time, I also have something to ask you. Lu Ya looked at him and frowned, who is the girl you like? Xiaoju did not answer, but looked at her, approaching her step by step. Lu Ya felt a little guilty at his sudden blazing gaze, and slowly backed away until she was in the corner, unable to retreat. Xiaoju leaned against the wall with one hand, looked down at her, took a deep breath, and said, "That person is you." Lu Ya was startled and asked, What? Xiaoju looked down at her and said, "I like you." Several guards of the Lu family had discovered Xiaoju a long time ago. When they saw their young lady being forced into a corner by him, they immediately ran over and shouted, "Let the young lady go. Roll." Lu Ya turned around and said something fiercely, then raised her head, looked at Xiaoju who was obviously frightened, her face turned red, and she whispered, What you just said, I didn't hear clearly." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 454. Chapter 452 of the main text of Ruyi Little Man. Two lovers. Xiaoju looked at Lu Ya, his face turned pale because he was frightened by her sudden get out just now. Looking at her current shy look, not only did he not feel the slightest tenderness, but he felt a little weak in his heart. The courage he had finally mustered suddenly collapsed at this moment. I forgot. He retracted his arm from the wall and said, "Why don't you wait until I remember?" He turned around quickly and was about to sneak away when a shout came from behind him. "Return." He paused in his steps and slowly turned his head. Lu Ya crossed her arms, looked into his eyes, and said, "What did you just say? Say it again." If you want to say it quickly, don't do it to your mother-in-law. I like you, will you marry me? Hearing this sentence again, Lu Ya's brows stretched and she slowly lowered her hands. She didn't know how to place them, and her face began to turn red. Seeing that she was silent for a long time, Xiaoju tentatively said, "If you don't want to, then I'll go back first." As soon as he turned his head, Lu Ya locked his neck from behind. Lu Ya dragged him towards the Lu mansion and sneered, "It's not that easy to leave." Xiaoju panicked and said, "Let's change places." Lu Ya waved her hand, "What are you afraid of? My father is not at home today." A moment later, in Lu Ya's boudoir, she approached Xiaoju, who was sitting by the bed and shivering, and said, "From today on, you are mine. If I see you flirting with another girl, you know the consequences." "Don't worry." Xiaoju waved his hand and said, "Tang Ning and I are different. I will always use him as a warning." He secretly apologized to Tang Ning in his heart. After all, it was Tang Ning's guidance that made him what he was today. But at this moment, in order to protect himself, he could only do this kind of thing of crossing the river and burning down the bridge. Lu Ya sat next to him and looked at him like this, feeling relieved in her heart. She had waited for more than 10 years before this piece of wood finally opened her eyes. At this moment, she felt all kinds of complex feelings in her heart. She looked at it for a while and then asked slowly, "Is there anything else you want to say to me?" Xiaoju thought for a while, looked at her, and said after a long time, "You don't have to pay back the 1,000 taels of silver you owe me." Lu Ya looked at his distressed expression and couldn't help clenching her fists. "What are you doing here?" The two of them turned around at the same time and saw Lu Ding standing at the door with a gloomy expression. "Dad, why are you back?" Lu Ya was shocked and asked, "Didn't you go to the Ministry of War?" Lu Ding did not answer, but glanced at Xiaoju and said coldly, "Xiao boy, come with me." Lu family, in the living room. Lu Ding sat on the main seat with a golden sword. Xiaoju followed him in and found a random seat to sit down. Lu Ding said in a deep voice, "Did I let you sit down?" "Dad." Lu Ya, who was standing behind him, shook his shoulders. Lu Ding coughed, then looked at Xiaoju and said, General Xiao went to the Ministry of War to find me just now. He said you want to marry Yater. Lu Ya's face turned red, but she looked at Xiaoju. Xiaoju stood up and said, Yater and I are in love, and I hope my father-in-law will make it happen. At this moment, he decided to carry out the secret of shameless death that Tang Ning taught him. Who is your father-in-law? Lu Ding stood up suddenly and looked at him with an angry look on his face. After looking at him for a while, the anger gradually disappeared and he waved his hand and said, That's it, Yater's reputation was ruined because of you. That's why you haven't gotten married until now. Since you two are in love, I won't stop you. Lu Ya showed a smile on her face and said excitedly, Thank you, Dad. But Lu Ding changed his words and said, A mere knight captain is not qualified to marry my Lu Ding's daughter. When you become a knight general, come to my Lu family to propose marriage. Lu Ya's expression changed and she quickly said, Dad, this can't be done. According to the military positions in the military, from captain to general, which one has not gone through more than 10 or even decades of accumulation, by which time, she will have become a thing of the past. Okay, Xiaoju agreed directly without hesitation. A quarter of an hour later, outside the Lu mansion, Lu Ya looked at Xiaoju and said angrily, Don't you want to marry me? Do you agree to my father's request? Ling Yun is only a few years older than us. He can be a general, why can't I? Don't worry, I will definitely be a general within 2 years, Xiaoju said unfazed. Besides, it's wonderful, everything is worth waiting for. We have been here for so many years, why are we still anxious for a year or two? Lu Ya felt sweet at his words and immediately stopped being angry. Lu Teng came over from a short distance away, looked at Xiaoju, frowned and said, Xiao, why are you here? Whose surname is Xiao? Xiaoju glanced at him disdainfully and said, Call me brother-in-law. Because of what happened yesterday, the Ministry of War made a rule that no one was allowed to pretend to be an opponent during the competition, so the 4 competitions on the second day lasted longer. It was already afternoon when Tang Ning returned home. There was almost no suspense in today's 4 games. In Group A, Yinka Wei defeated Dong Minwei. In the other groups, there was no match between the weak and the strong. This put many people in Beijing at ease. It seems that only a few people can turn the tide like the cavalry guards, and it cannot last. Generally speaking, this competition is normal. In Group A, the competition between Ziyu guards and Yinkai guards will be held tomorrow. If nothing unexpected happens, Ziyu guards should win this game easily. After that, the competition between the cavalry guards and Dongmen guards will be held. According to the performance and battle records of the 2 teams in the past 10 years, the probability of Dongmen guards winning is higher, at least on the surface. Compared with the competition, there is another more important thing today. I don't know if Xiaoju's confession was successful. Lu Ya liked him in the first place, and with the big wall dong technique taught by Tang Ning, the probability of success is very high. After all, which girl can resist the temptation of wall dong? Speaking of Xiaoju, Xiaoju came, and appeared with Lu Ya. Judging from the expressions on their faces, he should have successfully won Lu Ya. It's just that he came empty-handed, which seems very impolite. It would be fine if he was not polite at other times, but today was the day when he successfully confessed his love. During this period, Tang Ning hinted and made it clear that this wooden block had opened his mind. He actually didn't know how to repay his matchmaker? Tang Ning looked at them and asked, You? Lu Ya nodded generously, and Xiaoju smiled shyly. Tang Ning was extremely suspicious whether the strategy he taught Lu Teng was learned by Lu Ya. Their performance was completely the opposite. Lu Ya went to talk to Xiao Ru and Xiao Yi, and Xiaoju sat next to Tang Ning and said, What you taught me is really useful. Of course Tang Ning glanced at him and said, When I faced Miss Li in Chu State, I used this trick. Xiaoju looked at him and said eagerly, What other tricks do you have? Teach me a few more. Okay, so you learned all these from others. The voice behind them made the two of them tremble and turned their heads at the same time. Lu Ya looked at Xiaoju and gritted her teeth and said, "If no one taught you, would you not have said those words today?" Zhongyi, Su are you, and Zhao Man stood beside Lu Ya, looking at Tang Ning with an elusive look. Zhongyi looked at him with a smile on his face and asked, "What trick did my husband use when facing Miss Li?" Tang Ning looked up. Although they were all smiling, behind their smiles, he could smell the smell of the bed in the study. Zioki Battalion. Today was the competition between Ziuyu Guard and Yinkai Guard. Nichian, the Minister of War, walked around the field, walked to a military official in confusion, and asked, "Have you seen Lord Tang?" The official looked at him and explained, "Lord Tang just sent someone over and asked for 3 days of leave." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 455. Remember in 1 second, read wonderful novels for free without pop-ups. Yinkawei's strength ranking among the 16 guards is actually not low. In the past years, it has always been ranked in the upper middle position. Zhou Yinkawei easily defeated Dong Minwei yesterday and successfully accumulated 2 points. Unfortunately, their opponent today is Zhou Yuwei. Even though Zhou Yinkawei tried his best, he was still taken away by the opponent. So far, the group stage schedule has passed halfway. In Group A, Zhou Yuwei and Yinkawei each won 1 game and lost 1 game, accumulating 3 points. Dong Minwei lost 1 game and only had 1 point for the time being. Zioki Wei won 1 game and accumulated 2 points. Tomorrow's match between Zioki Wei and Dong Minwei will be quite important. Although Yinkawei lost, they also lost convincingly. They are not the opponent of Zhou Yuwei, but in this group, except for Zhou Yuwei, they are the strongest. If they can perform stably in the future, there is still a great possibility of entering the quarterfinals. When he learned the result of today's competition, Tang Ning was carrying a lot of bags and accompanying Zairu on shopping. Today he belongs to Zairu, tomorrow to Xiaoai, and the day after tomorrow to Zhao Man. Although accompanying others on shopping is a bit boring and a relatively relaxing thing for him, if he had to do it for 3 consecutive days, he would feel like he had no desire to live. Fortunately, there were only 3 people who were jealous. In the future, Tang Ning could not imagine what it would be like if a house full of jealous people overturned. In the future, he should be more careful when talking at home. Those 3 wives and 4 concubines and harmonious scenes in novels are all other people's families. If they are not careful, their family will be a scene of a major car accident. While accompanying Zairu on shopping, he also paid attention to the odds offered by major casinos. Now it is only the group stage, and there are not many people betting on each game. Except for the upset of the first game of Zioki Wei, there has been no more trouble in the casino. The 4 matches tomorrow will be between the 2 teams ranked last in each group. There is a small match every year and a big match every 4 years. The performance of the 16 guards on the field is relatively stable, and there are very few upsets. The strength of the East Gate Guard is higher than that of the Cavalry Guard, but considering that the Cavalry Guard has defeated the Left Feather Guard, this match is not very interesting and the odds are not high. The group stage has been going on for the 4th day. In each group, the 4 teams will compete in a round-robin manner, and the ranking will be determined according to the total points. It is more convincing than the draw competition in previous years, and there are few voices of opposition among the 16 guards. The first match today is the competition between the Left Cavalry Guard and the Left East Gate Guard. The 2 guards have also competed in the past. They have competed 5 times in 10 years, and the result is that the Left East Gate Guard won 4 and lost 1. The only loss was 10 years ago. On the field, the 100 people of the Left East Gate Guard have been assembled. Each team is led by a captain, but the captain himself does not go out. The Left East Gate captain personally gave everyone some instructions before coming to the audience. Someone familiar greeted him and said, Captain Zheng, it's up to you. Captain Zheng raised his hand and said, after winning the game today, I'll treat you to a drink at Xianglu tonight. In recent years, in the competition between the two guards, the left East Gate guards have almost maintained an undefeated record against the Zioki guards, so the situation of this competition is naturally very optimistic. Xiaoju stood on the other side, glanced at him, and said nothing. Someone looked at Captain Zheng and said, if you, the East Gate guards, work harder this time, you may be able to play in the A group. Captain Zheng said politely, it depends on luck. Although the East Gate guards are stronger than the Zioki guards, they are not opponents of the Ziyu guards and the Yinkai guards, but they are not completely without a chance. If they are lucky, they may be able to step on the Yinkai guards. With the sound of a gong, Captain Zheng looked at the field and said, it started. In the 16 guards competition, it was very frustrating to capture the flag after everyone was eliminated. The people were gone, and the flag was gone, but the most frustrating thing was that the people were still there, but the flag was gone. Because of the previous experience of Zhou Yue, when they met Zioki Wei again, Dong Minwei arranged 3 times the number of people to guard the general flag. As soon as the competition started, the two teams fell into a state of anxiety, each with injuries, and people were constantly eliminated with white powder on their bodies. Someone stood on the sidelines and said in surprise, it's strange, Zhou Xiaoyi doesn't seem to be that weak. Before this, everyone thought that Zioki Wei was the weakest in Group A, and relied on conspiracy and trickery to win Zhou Yue. When they met Dong Minwei, although they were not crushed, they would show a great disadvantage at the beginning. But the facts were different from what they imagined. The competition had started for a while, and Dong Minwei had not taken a clear advantage. The development of the matter was too different from what he expected, and Captain Zheng's face began to change. They had already lost to the Yinkai guards. Tomorrow's competition with the Ziyu guards would definitely be a loss. If they lost today's match, it would be 3 consecutive losses. When they return, the general will definitely cut him into pieces. He was already a little panicked, but his expression was forced to be calm. He said, this is the tactic of the East Gate guards. Everyone, please watch. So that's it. Everyone looked at the field and talked about it. The East Gate guards have begun to defend. Could it be that Captain Zheng is fighting a defensive battle? The Zioki guards have already attacked under the general's flag. Is this Captain Zheng's plan to lure the enemy in? The general's flag of the East Gate guards has been pulled down. The East Gate guards lost. My silver. It was not until Lang Zhonwu of the Ministry of War announced the result that Colonel Zheng stood there for a long time, then he pursed his dry lips and said awkwardly, they didn't perform well today. Several people came over from the sidelines, and a young man holding a pen and paper walked up to Colonel Zheng and asked impatiently, this captain, in the 4th game of the 16th Guards League, a group match that just ended, Zhou Dongminwei lost to Zhou Xiaoyi, what do you think about this? Colonel Zheng frowned at him and asked, who are you? The young man said, I am a reporter from Tang Renzai. I am conducting a post-game interview with you. I hope you can cooperate with us. When he heard that the other party was a reporter from Tang Renzai, Lieutenant Zheng's brows immediately relaxed. He has been in the competition field these days, so he naturally knows who the reporter is. In the big competition field, he would rather offend the opponent's generals than Tang Renzai's reporters. This is an iron rule, and their pens are not easy to mess with. If they say a wrong word, these people only need to write, and tomorrow all the people in the capital will know. Well, what do you think? Lieutenant Zheng cleared his throat and said, the reason why the East Gate guards lost is mainly because this is where the Zioki camp is, and the soldiers of the East Gate guards are not very familiar with the venue here. Second, during the competition just now, the onlookers kept shouting, which affected the performance of our soldiers. Third, today's weather is not too good. Colonel Zheng looked up and saw cloudless skies and warm wind. He coughed lightly and said, "Today's weather is so good. The wind blows people's hair sleepy, the soldiers are not in good condition." This was Tang Ning's third and last day of leave. The weather was very good today. Tang Ning was lying in the yard, basking in the sun and blowing the warm wind. Qing'er and Xiao Xiao were helping him beat his legs. It was supposed to be that he was enjoying himself very much, but he didn't feel very good about it. Instead, after overexertion, he always felt like his body was hollowed out. Lying here, he felt exhausted both physically and mentally. Today is the 5th day of the group stage. In the game that just ended in the morning, Zhou Yawei easily defeated Deng Minwei. So far, Deng Minwei has lost 3 games in 3 games and was eliminated early. In Group A, Zhou Yawei has 2 wins and 1 loss, with 5 points, and has already qualified ahead of schedule. Yinkawei has 1 win, 1 loss, with 3 points. Zhao Wei has 2 wins, with 4 points. Tomorrow's last game is Zhou Xiaoyi versus Yinkawei. If Zhao Wei wins tomorrow, he will take first place in the group with 6 points. If Zhao Wei loses, then Zhao Wei and Yinkawei of the left feathers will each score 5 points. According to the rules, the points after each game must be calculated. The sum of the remaining players on the field, the 2 teams with the largest remaining players qualify. Even after 5 games, the final outcome is still full of uncertainty. Tang Ning was lying on the chair. Zhonyi and Su Ru came over arm in arm, looked at him and said, "Are you exhausted from the past 2 days, sir?" Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "It's okay. I should accompany you. I don't feel tired at all." Zhonyi leaned down and whispered in his ear, "Thank you for your hard work, sir. Tonight, Xiru and I will serve our husband together." Tang Ning's face turned pale. She stood up and said, "I have taken a few days off, and I have accumulated a lot of matters at the Ministry of War. I have to go to the Ministry of War to deal with them all night tonight. You go to bed first, and you don't have to wait for me." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 456. Chapter 454 of the main volume of Ruyi Little Man, Can I Stay? In fact, Tang Ning's plan for the Ministry of War was very detailed. Just proceed step by step and there is nothing to deal with. But people always need to rest. After 3 days of hard work, he needed a simple sleep to recharge his batteries. He sat in the duty room at the Ministry of War until night, looked at the empty duty room, and began to miss the bed in his study. At this time, he suddenly thought of Xiaoju. Good brothers are meant to sleep at critical moments. The tables and chairs in the Ministry of War are too hard, so it is better to go to Xiao Mansion to find Xiaoju to make do with it at night. Tang Ning left the Ministry of War and walked to the door of Xiao's residence, just in time to see Xiaoju and Lu Ya walking out. Xiaoju looked at him and asked, "Hey, why are you here? Is there something wrong?" Tang Ning looked at them and asked, "What are you?" Xiaoju said, "Go out for a walk, do you want to come with me?" No. Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "I was just passing by, you guys were playing." He almost forgot that Xiaoju was no longer single now. The 2 of them were hanging out on the top of a willow tree. After dusk, they went out to walk on the road at night to increase their relationship. They might even kiss and hug each other. Are you standing aside and watching? A person must have his wits about him. Tang Ning was not as cold-blooded as Xiaoju. She waved her hand and strode away. It was not yet the curfew time, but it was still a bit cold at night in the 12th lunar month. There were not many people on the street. Tang Ning stood on the street, not knowing where to call home. He told them that they were working overtime at the Ministry of War at night and could not return home, let alone go to the county government office. Hongzi Yuge Pavilion was not safe. After much thinking, they could only think of one place. Natural home. She is indeed loyal to the emperor. The old woman named Bai Jin put down a letter and said coldly, after more than 10 years, she still hasn't gotten rid of her bad habit of recognizing her master everywhere. Su Mei tilted her head, leaned on the bed rail, covered her mouth and yawned, and said lazily, she will never use this to hurt you after so many years of friendship between you, senior fellow apprentices. There is nothing to worry about. She dares, the old woman said with a stern look on her face, if her identity is exposed, she will also die. Besides, Chen Huang is as cunning as a fox. He is probably interested in her poisonous poison skills. Do you think that old fox will you really trust her? The old woman stood up and said, have people keep an eye on her. If there is anything unusual, report it immediately. Su Mei replied absently, I know. When the old woman turned around and walked out of the room, she paused, then raised her feet and left. Su Mei took off her coat and asked, Xiao Tao, is the bath water ready? Tang Ning walked in and said, I didn't see Xiao Tao when I came in just now. I don't know where she went. You're here. Su Mei was only wearing a white shirt, but she didn't care at all. She walked to the table, poured him a cup of tea, and asked, it's so late, why do you have time to come here? Tang Ning took a sip of tea, pinched a piece of pastry from the table, took a bite, and then explained, I was busy at the Ministry of War for a while, and I passed by here when I came back. I stopped by to take a look. He glanced at a odds table on Su Mei's desk, with a few circled on it with a pen. After picking it up and looking at it, he asked, you want to bet on this too? Su Mei glanced at him and said, if you can make money, why not make it? Tang Ning also realized at this moment that with their intelligence-gathering abilities, they must have an accurate judgment on the strength of the 16th Guards. These bets were basically to give them money. But nothing is absolute. It is precisely because of these people who believe in their own judgment that he and Tang Yaoyao can make money. Tang Ning looked at what she had circled, shook her head and said, in Group A, do you bet that Zoya Wei and Yinkai Wei will qualify? Su Mei looked at him and asked, do you have any better suggestions? Tang Ning suggested, I'm still more optimistic about the Knight Riders. In this 16 guards competition, you won't lose money by betting on them. Su Mei looked at it, seemed to realize something, and asked, aren't you afraid that I'll stake hundreds of thousands of taels of silver and leave you with no money to earn? If you want to make a lot of money by gambling, you can only bet on the big underdog. Zhaoqi Wei is a big underdog. Everyone else buys Yu Lin Wei, so he buys Xiao Qi Wei. The odds of Xiao Qi Wei are naturally high, which is equivalent to buying Yu Lin Wei to beat those people. All the money was made by him. The odds are actually not determined based on the strength of the two parties, but based on the funds bet by the two parties. If a large amount of funds enter the market, the bookmaker will definitely adjust the odds. If Su Mei bets hundreds of thousands of taels on Zhaoqi Wei, the odds of the Knight Rider will definitely go down, and Tang Ning will also make a lot less money. He looked at Su Mei and said, we are a family. Of course we have to make money together, but what? Tang Ning warned her, but you can't tell Tang Yaoyao about this. The 16th guard competition was planned by him and Tang Yaoyao together. Strictly speaking, his current behavior was leaking business secrets. If Tang Yaoyao knew that he leaked it to Su Mei, even Bai Dong would beg her to no forgiveness from her. Su Mei looked at him and asked, are you afraid of her? Tang Ning explained, the main reason is that I can't beat. Xiao Chao ran in from outside, followed by several maids, holding buckets of hot water in her arms, and said, Miss, the hot water is ready. Tang Ning didn't eat anything when she came out at night, but took the pastries on her table to satisfy her hunger. Su Mei took off her shoes and socks, stood barefoot on the floor, looked at him and said, I want to take a shower. Tang Ning pinched a piece of cake, stuffed it into his mouth, and said vaguely, go ahead. Su Mei looked at the bathtub in the room, then looked at him again and asked, "Do you want to come with me?" Tang Ning was stunned and almost choked on the cake. He swallowed it with great difficulty. Looking at her, he said in shock, I'm afraid it's not good." Su Mei said unhappily, "You know it's not good, but why don't you go out?" Tang Ning finally reacted, stood up hurriedly, and strode out the door. Halfway through, he turned back, took away the remaining cakes on the table, and closed the door. He sat in the light of the corridor. Xiao Tao sat next to him, ready to go in and help Su Mei add water at any time. Tang Ning turned his head to look at her and asked, "Xiao Tao, how old are you this year?" Xiao Tao thought for a while and said, 16. Ever since he came back last time and gave her a lot of rouge and spices, she has been much more polite to Tang Ning. Bored, Tang Ning casually asked, "How did you and your young lady meet?" Xiao Tao looked at the night sky and said casually, "When I was a child, my parents didn't want me anymore, and it was the young lady who picked me up." Tang Ning looked at her. No wonder Su Mei spoiled her so much. It turned out that they both had the same fate. He sighed, thinking that she was mentally weak and had difficulty sleeping because of being too tired. After getting to know her gradually, he found that it was probably because of the childhood incident that left a huge psychological shadow on her, which has not been eliminated until now. It is always very troublesome for women to take a bath, and Tang Ning waited for her outside for more than half an hour. Su Mei was wiping her hair in the room. When she saw Tang Ning coming in, she was surprised and asked, "It's so late, it's curfew outside, why haven't you left yet?" Tang Ning looked embarrassed and asked, "Can I stay tonight?" Su Mei's towel almost fell to the ground. She asked with a hint of panic in her voice, What? Don't get me wrong," Tang Ning explained immediately, "I mean, can you help me find a room here?" She had slept with him so many times, he just wanted to stay with her for one night. It shouldn't be too much, right? If there is no empty room, she and Xiao Tao can squeeze in. Su Mei looked at him, the panic on her face disappeared, and she didn't ask any more questions. She walked to the bed and stuffed a purple belly band into the quilt, saying, "Don't bother, you can sleep here tonight." Tang Ning was quite touched that she actually gave him her room. He walked to the bed, took off his shoes and socks and climbed onto the bed, saying, "Thank you." He sat on the bed and watched Su Mei walk to the door and close it, then took a new quilt from the cabinet, got on the bed, shrank back, and asked, "What are you doing?" Sleeping Su Mei covered her mouth and yawned, saying, "Why are you so nervous? It's not the first time anyway." Tang Ning thought she wanted to squeeze in with Xiao Tao, but she actually wanted to squeeze in with him. Although it was not the first time as she said, it was the first time he took the initiative. He glanced at Su Mei, crawled into the quilt, grabbed something with his right hand, and pulled it out casually, saying in surprise, "What is it?" "Who told you to touch me?" Su Mei snatched the belly band from his hand and said, "Sleep on the quilt outside." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 457. Shuxiu Palace. Concubine Shu held a piece of paper in her hand and frowned. There was a list of names written on this piece of paper, which were the candidate officials drafted by the Ministry of Rights this time. Shen Ye's name was written at the first one. No, Big Brother was reckless this time. A trace of anxiety appeared on concubine Shu's face. She looked behind her and said, "You should leave the palace immediately and send a message to Fang Shangshu on my behalf, saying that the Ministry of Personnel must not recommend Shen Ye to be the Minister of Rights. The Shen family and the Fang family are close friends. She can understand her eldest brother's intention to increase the bargaining chip for King Run, but this is too obvious. Once His Majesty thinks of something based on this, their plan will be aborted just after it has begun. Middle. Right now, it is definitely not an opportunity for King Run to walk from the back to the front. Zhao Yuan shook her head and walked in from the door, looked at concubine Shu, and asked doubtfully, "Concubine, the Minister of Rights is Zhang Yan, who is Shen Ye?" Concubine Fang Shu was stunned, looked at him suspiciously, and asked, "How do you know that the Minister of Rights is Zhang Yan?" "I just came from my father's place. I heard what my father said." Zhao Yuan looked at concubine Fang Shu and said in surprise, "Concubine, who is Zhang Yan? Why does it sound familiar?" "Zhang Yan is the father of your Zhang family sister," Fang Shifei explained, picked up the paper in her hand, and looked at it again. Zhang Yan's name was listed last. According to common sense, the position of the Minister of Rights is so different. It's not his turn. Could it be that the order of the list submitted by the Ministry of Rights has been adjusted? Zhao Yuan said happily, "Has your father-in-law been promoted?" "Who is your father-in-law?" Fang Shifei glanced at him angrily and said, "At such a young age, from whom did I learn these words, and I am half-hearted about girls." "Mr. He," Zhao Yuan said confidently, "there are 5 mistresses in your family. I only have sisters from the Wang family, Zhang family, and Bai family. There are still 2 more to go." Concubine Fang Shu looked at him and asked, "Don't you have only 4 ladies in your family?" Zhao Yuan's expression was stunned, and he knew that he had let slip just now and almost confessed the imperial sister. He rolled his eyes and said with a naive smile, "Sir, there are only 4 mistresses. I remembered it wrong." Fortunately, concubine Fang Shu didn't argue with him about this. She looked at him and asked seriously, "Did you really hear my father say that the new Minister of Rights is the father of the Zhang family's sister?" Zhao Yuan took out something from her arms, handed it to concubine Fang Shu, and said, "Concubine, you will know by yourself." Fang Shifei looked at a strange paper-like object in her hand and wondered, "What is this?" "My teacher taught me how to fold this little frog," Zhao Yuan said, "Put it on the ground, press its butt, and it will jump forward. If you want to see it, I will let you see it." Fang Shifei shook her head and asked, "What does this have to do with Sister Zhang's father?" Zhao Yuan took apart the paper art and said, "This is the paper my father gave me when I folded the little frog for him just now. I saw my father-in-law's name on it." Although Fang Shifei was amused that the father and son were actually playing with memorials, she was pleased with their lack of scruples. After taking it apart, she saw the list of candidates for the Minister of Rights submitted by the Ministry of Personnel. Zhang Yan's name was impressive. Listed first. She looked at the paper in her hand and said in surprise, "Why has it changed?" Zhao Yuan looked up at her and said, "Mother, I want to go out of the palace to play with the Zhang family sister." Fang Shifei gave him a dissatisfied look and said, "What are you playing for? Have you finished your homework for today?" Zhao Yuan looked at her and said innocently, "Sir, he said that there was a lot of fun at Zhang's sister's house, so he asked me to join in the fun." "Sir," Fang Shifei murmured, and a bright light suddenly flashed in her mind. She breathed a sigh of relief and murmured, "No wonder." Based on her understanding of her eldest brother, he would never have imagined this, but she forgot that besides Fang Hong, there was also Tang Ning in the staff department. If he hadn't been here this time, maybe something good would have turned into something bad, and even their plan would have failed halfway. She looked at Zhao Yuan, who was taking out a book to read, and asked, "What are you doing?" Zhao Yuan said in surprise, "You asked me to study." Concubine Fang Shu took the book from his hand, threw it aside, and said, "Stop studying and go play with your Zhang sister. From now on, whatever your husband says will be whatever you say, just listen to him." Zhang family. The Zhang family in the capital is famous for its poetry and calligraphy, and has countless disciples. Each generation has been appointed as a bachelor. It is a famous noble family in Beijing. Although the position of Grand Scholar does not hold real power and does not participate in court affairs, its status is extremely respected. Everyone from the common people to the courtiers respects him very much. It was the Zhang family's luncheon at this time. Everyone was eating slowly, no one was talking, and no one was making too much noise. At a certain moment, a servant walked in from outside and whispered, "Sir, His Royal Highness Prince Run is here." During the dinner, a pretty little girl put down her chopsticks, looked at an old man in front of her, and whispered, "Grandpa, I'm done eating." Academician Zhang nodded and said, "Go." Although the rules of the Zhang family are that the younger ones are not allowed to leave until the elders leave the table, but if the little girl does not go out, if King Run is invited in, all of them will have to stand up and salute, which will be troublesome. King Run Zhaoyuan often comes to the Zhang family, and the Zhang family is not surprised by this. After dinner, the servants cleaned up the leftovers of the bowls and chopsticks. The old man wiped his mouth, glanced at a middle-aged man below, and asked casually, "Your Majesty wants to appoint the Minister of Rights again. Who is the one recommended by the Secretariat?" The middle-aged man said, "It's my son." The Secretariat is responsible for drafting and issuing imperial edicts. The former has become the job of the Hanlin Academy many years ago. The Secretariat of Chen State is just an institution that issues decrees and imperial edicts. It does not participate in court affairs. Most of them are noble officials. The Ministry of Rights is actually the same. After even the affairs of the imperial examination were transferred to the Ministry of Personnel, it completely became a noble place. However, the Ministry of Rights is still the head of the 6 ministries in name. The power of the Minister of Rights is not great, but his status in the hearts of scholars and even officials is half a level higher than that of the ministers of other ministries. If the Zhang family can produce another Minister of Rights in addition to the Grand Secretary, then they will stand at the top of the kingly family. However, there are still many officials in the court with more seniority and ability than Zhang Yan. No one can get this position. This time, it is just to fill the number. The old man looked at him and said, "The Secretariat is not much worse than the Ministry of Rights. You are still young, so it is good to hone your skills more." The middle-aged man did not hold any hope in his heart, and nodded, "I understand." Zhang's family, in the back garden. Zhao Yuan picked a flower casually, handed it to the little girl with both hands, and said, "For you." The little girl was about to take it, but he suddenly said, "I will help you put it on your head. This flower must look good on your head." The little girl blushed and said, "Okay then." Zhao Yuan put the little flower on the little girl's head, stared at her, and smiled innocently, "It looks good." The little girl squinted and said, "Not as pretty as the Wang family sister and the Bai family sister. They have their own beauty, you have yours, you are all beautiful." Zhao Yuan saw that the little girl seemed to be about to speak again, hurriedly changed the subject and said, "I came here today to congratulate you, your father is going to be the Minister of Rights." "Liar." The little girl pouted at him and said, "Dad said that he can't be the minister." Zhao Yuan looked at her and asked, "Do you dare to bet?" The little girl said, "What bet?" Zhao Yuan thought for a while and said, "If your father becomes the Minister of Rights, you kiss me." The little girl blushed and pouted, "What if not?" Zhao Yuan smiled silly and said, "Then I will kiss you." The little girl looked at him and nodded hesitantly. "Don't cheat." Zhao Yuan looked at her, stretched out his little finger, and said, "Pink." The little girl stretched out her little finger and hooked it with him, saying, "Pink." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 458. Chapter 456 of the main text of Ruyi Xiaolang Jun. Emperor Chen promised that the 16 guards competition was not just a competition for ranking. The 16 guards had the responsibility to guard the capital, but the capital had always been peaceful and did not need to be guarded at all. The promotion of the sons of generals in the capital always had to have some outstanding achievements. Lu Teng was promoted to Yulin Du Wei for his meritorious service in guarding the Chu state. It was a natural thing. Although he had just been promoted not long ago, as long as he could lead the left Yu Wei to win the first place in this competition, he would be a lieutenant in no time. Although the time between them was a little short, as long as he made achievements, no one would have any objections. This was his first battle to be promoted to Yulin Du Wei. If he did not even make it to the group stage, it would be embarrassing, not to mention that he would have to wait at least another year before he was eligible for promotion. In this way, wouldn't he still be suppressed by Xiaoju? Seeing Chen Chuan's thoughtful look, as if he was persuaded by Xiaoju, Lu Teng's face changed and said, "You are violating the rules." Xiaoju glanced at him and asked, "Does the Ministry of War have a rule that you can't admit defeat?" Military. Lu Teng opened his mouth and realized that the Ministry of War really didn't seem to have such a rule. He thought about it, looked at Xiaoju and said, "If the Zioki guard admits defeat, you will lose the bet just now." "Are you stupid?" Xiaoju looked at him and said, "We just bet on whether the Zioki guard can advance. Who do you care about me and who will advance?" As of the last day of the group stage, the rankings of the other groups are actually no longer suspenseful, but the situation of Group A is still confusing. Whether the Yulin Guard can advance is closely related to the results of the competition between the Zioki Guard and the Yinkai Guard. If the Zioki Guard wins, then the Zioki Guard and the Ziuyu Guard can both advance with 6 points and 5 points. If the Cavalry Guard loses, the three guards will have the same score and advance according to the number of people. As long as they fight fairly, both sides will definitely suffer losses, and the left feather guard will still advance steadily. But if the cavalry guard hands over the general flag at the beginning of the game, then the number of their two guards will immediately exceed the left feather guard, and the left feather guard can return to the palace to guard. Xiaoju looked at Lu Teng and said, "How about it? As long as you call me brother-in-law, we will have a good fight with the Silver Qi Guard. How about it?" "You are cheating." Lu Teng's face showed a trace of anger, and said, "I want to report it." Tang Ning looked at Lu Teng with an indignant face, shook his head helplessly, and said, "It's a pity that the Ministry of War has no regulations that surrender is not allowed in the competition. If the cavalry guard really did that, the left feather guard can only be eliminated regretfully. This is the rule." In fact, even in later generations, such situations often happen. In order to eliminate the strong teams that they might meet in the finals, some teams will indeed adopt such methods within the rules. Others can only condemn them for violating the ethics of the game and despise them morally, but they cannot say that they violated the rules. Those who bet on Zhou Yue to qualify can curse Xiao Wei and Yin Wei as much as they want, but it cannot change the fact that Zhou Yue was eliminated. With Xiaoju's yellow fish brain, he naturally couldn't come up with this idea. This was Tang Ning's idea for him just now. In this way, Xiao Wei can qualify and hide their shortcomings, and Yin Wei can also qualify, killing two birds with one stone, and everyone is happy. I'll tell you, this guy is full of bad intentions. In the 16 guards competition, my left-feathered guards couldn't even make it to the top 8. A voice suddenly came from behind Tang Ning. Tang Ning turned around and looked at the figures sitting in the back row and immediately said, "Your Majesty." Everyone also reacted and bowed at the same time, saying, "Your Majesty." Emperor Chen, Wei Jian, Lu Ding, and others didn't know how long they had been standing there. He looked at Tang Ning and said, "If the cavalry guards surrender without a fight, what's the point of this competition? I won't allow you to take advantage of it." Xiaoju pursed his lips and said, "Your Majesty, war is a trick, and we didn't break the rules." "Shut up," Lu Ding glanced at him, and Xiaoju immediately retracted his head and stopped talking. Emperor Chen looked at Xiaoju and Chen Chuan and said, "In this competition, you all have to show your true abilities." "Yes. As you command." Xiaozhu and Chen Chuan could only bow and say yes. They met Chen Huang, who was watching the competition incognito. They knew that they couldn't continue the fake match. Tang Ning and Xiaozhu exchanged glances, and Xiaozhu nodded slightly. They had already discussed how to play the match. The cavalry guards must win, but they must win with skill and level, the kind that just happens to win, but wins with great difficulty, and is almost overturned. After a gong sounded, the last match of Group A began. According to the official ranking, the strength of the silver guards and the cavalry guards is more than one level apart, but the competition has been going on for a long time, and the silver guards have not gained a clear advantage. Lu Ding looked at the field and couldn't help saying, the cavalry guard has made great progress. It seems that the Zhou guard lost the game not only because of that special force. Emperor Chen looked at Tang Ning and asked, that special force was also your idea, right? Tang Ning bowed and said, I just gave Captain Xiao a little inspiration. It was hard to tell who would win on the field. Emperor Chen shifted his attention away from the field and looked at Tang Ning, asking, I heard that the 100 cavalry guards were trained by the guards in your mansion. Tang Ning's face changed and he said, Your Majesty, this is a bet between me and Captain Xiao. Emperor Chen asked, what does this have to do with the bet between you two? Tang Ning said, I also know some methods of training and using troops. I made a bet with Colonel Xiao that I will give these 100 knights to train. If they can enter the top 4 in the 16 guards competition, Colonel Xiao will I had to lose 1,000 taels of silver, but as a doctor in the Ministry of War, I couldn't get too close to the cavalry guards, and I would be criticized by others, so I borrowed the help of my family's bodyguard to train the cavalry guards for a month. Emperor Chen looked at Xiaozhu and asked, is this possible? Xiaozhu nodded and said, Your Majesty, this is indeed the case. Chen Huang looked at Tang Ning again and said in surprise, I'm not surprised that you know poetry and articles, but you also know how to train and use soldiers. Tang Ning said, I have only read a few military books and only have a brief understanding. It takes 1 month to train the cavalry guards to this level. Even my 16 guards generals can't do it. You don't even have the slightest idea. Chen Huang looked at him with an unexpected look, but thinking that this was not the first time he had created such an accident, his eyes gradually turned into admiration, and said, I didn't expect you to have such ability, so be it. If Zhaoqi Wei is this time, if you can get into the top 4 of the 16 guards, I will grant you the position of General of the Horse Guards. If the guards of the Horse Guards can win the first place in the competition of the 16 guards, I will grant you the position of General of the Horse Guards and hand over the Horse Guards to you. You train. Not far away, General Chen Zhonglang and the 2 generals on the left and right of Zhaoqi Wei looked at each other, and they both saw bitterness in each other's eyes. Among the 16th guards, the left and right generals all had 5th grade military positions, which was the same as Tang Ning's current official rank. However, the middle rank generals were actually 4th grade military officers. Moreover, among the 16th guards, the generals generally only had false titles, and most generals had no titles. In Beijing, it can be said that the actual person in charge of each guard is General Zhonglang. Although the imperial court often appointed civilian officials to military positions, most of them were for a certain purpose. This was the first time that a certain guard was handed over to a civilian official. Tang Ning was startled when she heard this. If Huang Chen hadn't promised him a blank check, he would have really prospered this time. As the top 3 scholar in the imperial examination, Tang Ning never thought that one day he would turn the Tang family into a general. Even Xiaozhu's eyes were full of envy when he looked at Tang Ning. Lu Ding glanced at Chen Huang and then lowered his head. He occasionally glanced at Tang Ning with a deep look in his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. Tang Ning came to her senses, cupped her hands and said, Thank you for your grace, I will do my best. Speaking of koi. Chen Huang suddenly thought of something, looked at him, and asked, will everyone present have a chance to win the gift you are sending? Tang Ning nodded and said, "Your Majesty, the gift is drawn based on the seat number. Everyone has a chance." Emperor Chen glanced at him, including me. Tang Ning said, "Of course, this includes His Majesty and all the great lords in the court." Chen Huang looked back at the field and said, "One of thousands of people, I don't know who can have such good luck." Chen Huang murmured and began to focus on watching the game. Tang Ning looked at the field. Not long after, she suddenly turned her head, looked at Wei Jian who was slowly walking over, and asked, "Is there something wrong, Mr. Wei?" Wei Jian raised his hands and shrank them in his sleeves. He looked at him with a meaningful look and asked with a smile, "We just want to ask Mr. Tang, who is so lucky to be the chosen one among thousands of people, stand out among the crowd." "How do I know this?" Tang Ning glanced at him and said, "We are drawing lots fairly, not using secret methods." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 459. Wei Jian was really idle, so he ran over to ask a question, and then stood behind Emperor Chen again. Tang Ning looked back at the field. The battle between the Zioqi Guard and the Yinkai Guard was still tense. In this short while, both sides had eliminated more than 30 people. This scene was also beyond the expectations of the spectators. It's strange that the Zioqi Guard can fight against the Yinkai Guard on equal terms. Could it be that they were hiding their weaknesses before? It's impossible. They almost lost the last match with the Dongmen Guard. This time they must have performed exceptionally well. What's wrong with the Yinkai Guard? They can't even beat the Zioqi Guard. I bet on them to win. The Zioqi Guard and the Yinkai Guard fought back and forth, and the fight was inextricable, which touched the hearts of everyone in the field. Finally, with the sound of 3 gongs, a captain of the Zioqi Guard waved the Yinkai Guard's flag in his hand, and the last match of Group A finally came to an end. Although the battle was tense, Yinkai Guard was ultimately defeated by Zioqi Guard. Hundreds of people on the field were eliminated, but Zioqi Guard also paid a heavy price. In the end, less than 5 people remained on the field. Dr. Wu cleared his throat, stepped forward, and said loudly, "This game, Zhou Xiaoyi wins." The round-robin match of Group A ended here. Zhou Xiaoyi won 3 games and qualified as the first in the group. Zhou Yawei won 2 games and lost 1, and also qualified. As for Dongmen Guard and Yinkai Guard, they were unfortunately eliminated and stopped in the top 16. This result was actually far beyond everyone's expectations. Zioqi Guard, as a dark horse, eliminated the more powerful Yinkai Guard and advanced strongly, which shocked everyone and made many people lose money. Lu Teng obviously couldn't accept this result, but he finally walked in front of Xiaoju and called him brother-in-law reluctantly. "Not bad." Emperor Chen looked at Tang Ning, nodded with satisfaction, and said, "I am looking forward to what you can do with the cavalry guards." After watching this game, Emperor Chen did not stay for long and returned to the palace with everyone. Before leaving, Wei Jian glanced at him again, his eyes meaningful. "Brother Tang Ning." Tang Ning was about to go back when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Fang Xinyu ran over from the side, looked at him and said, "I'll go back with you." "Is Xiao Xiao's sister at home?" "I don't know either." "You can go to Tang Mansion and take a look. The old beggar would take her out from time to time." Tang Ning didn't go back last night, so he really didn't know if she was there. He shook his head and said, "Why are you here?" She looked back and said, "Dad said there's something exciting here, so he brought me here to see it." Fang Xinyu was followed by Fang Zhe. He looked at a brick box on the front stage and asked, "What is this?" Tang Ning said casually, "A lottery box. The 16 guards competition is not held only once. For convenience, he asked someone to build a lottery box with bricks, in the most conspicuous place, so that everyone can see it, so that no one would say that they were operating behind the scenes." Fang Zhe asked again, "Is this used to select the so-called koi?" Tang Ning nodded. Fang Zhe looked at him and asked, "What do you think?" No, Tang Ning refused without even thinking about it. Although Fang Zhe is Fang Xiaopang's father, don't expect him to do it in secret. This is a matter of principle. Is he such an unprincipled person? Fang Zhe shook his head and asked, "Do you think, is it appropriate for His Majesty not to be chosen for this great gift?" "Why not?" Tang Ning spoke without hesitation. Halfway through, he suddenly seemed to think of something and his eyes suddenly widened. At this moment, he thought of the look Wei Jian gave him before he left, and understood the deep meaning of his eyes. This is not a fair lottery at all. If there is only one lucky fish this time, it can only be, and must be, Emperor Chen. This is not a matter of money, but of attitude in front of Emperor Chen, in front of all the officials in the court, the dignitaries in the capital, and in front of representatives from all walks of life in the capital. Tell them that others are the chosen ones, the sons of luck. If this is really the case, Tang Ning feels that he will only be a general in this life. No, it is very likely that he will not even be a general in this life. Son of heaven, in this land of Chen state, only Emperor Chen is the son of God. Anyone who dares to claim God as his father will have a bad end. Damn feudal society, Tang Ning gritted his teeth secretly, his heart bleeding. Don't let Xiaoyu play too late, let her come back early. Fang Zhe glanced at him, put his hands behind his back, and turned away. When Tang Ning and Fang Xiaoyu returned home, they were still in a heavy mood. The overwhelming advertisements have been promoted, and the coin must be drawn, otherwise the popularity accumulated with great difficulty will be destroyed. It can't really be given to Emperor Chen secretly, otherwise even a fool will know what's going on, and someone will stab them in the back. For now, they can only increase the reward, draw 2 koi, and give out an identical gift package. Losing 10,000 taels of silver at once, even he feels distressed. And he hasn't figured out how to tell Tang Yaoyao about this matter. Before that, there is one thing I want to tell Lao Zheng. It was obvious that old Zheng had some past that he didn't want to talk about. No matter how stupid Tang Ning was, he wouldn't really believe that he used to be a pig butcher in the army. Chen Huang had a suspicious personality, and he already had doubts about Lao Zheng's help in training troops. Since Lao Zheng was unwilling to mention the past, in order not to cause any trouble, Tang Ning took everything on herself. Unexpectedly, this package actually brought out a lieutenant general. After warning Lao Zheng, he climbed over the wall and went to Tang Yaoyao's courtyard. "Where did you go last night?" Tang Yaoyao stood in the yard, looked at him and asked. "I went to the Ministry of War to look for you yesterday, and they said you left before curfew." Tang Ning stepped forward and said, "Don't rush this matter now. I have something important to tell you." "What's up?" This scene seemed familiar, and Tang Yaoyao's expression suddenly became wary. As if she had thought of something, she came closer to Tang Ning, sniffed her expression changed drastically, and said, "Why do you smell like that vixen named Su? Are you with her?" "What?" Tang Ning looked at her in surprise and said, "Where are you thinking?" "I want to say that the gift list we are giving out for drawing koi this time will probably have to add another gift." Tang Yaoyao looked at him and asked suspiciously, "Is this the case?" Tang Ning nodded and said, "That's it. You and Suhuji are not together. Why did you want to go here?" Tang Yaoyao breathed a sigh of relief, waved his hand and said, "You can add more, it's no big deal." Tang Ning was stunned and said, "This is 10,000 taels of silver." Tang Yaoyao walked towards the room and waved, "Isn't it just 10,000 taels?" "I agree." Tang Ning couldn't believe that Fairy Tang was so generous and reasonable today, regardless of the reason. But it's okay if she doesn't care. No, even if she doesn't care, Tang Ning still cares. Is it so easy to take advantage of him? Not only was he taking advantage, it was basically a free prostitution. Considering that the other party was the emperor, Tang Ning decided to write down the account first and collect some interest from his daughter before he thought of ways to recover the losses. After the group matches ended yesterday, the top 8 rosters for the 16th guards have been released. The left and right Yulanwei and the left and right Jinyawei were successfully promoted as expected. What was surprising was the intrusion of Zhou Xiaoyi, who became the most eye-catching presence among the top 8. The reason for this attention is that this is the first time in the past 10 years that Zhou Xiaoyi has entered the top 16 ranks. If this news only caused a small stir in the capital, then when Tang and Tang suddenly announced that Tu Koi would be drawn in the finals, people in the capital who had already bought tickets for the finals were once again excited. This means that the probability of being selected by them has doubled, and for some people, the possibility of having enough food and clothing for the rest of their lives has doubled. This temporary increase in sales undoubtedly made Tang and Tang's businesses become conscientious merchants in the hearts of the people. Within half a day, the customer flow of the 2 major stores in Beijing increased sharply. In a certain hall of the palace, Emperor Chen put down today's newspaper in his hand and said, he actually planned to draw 2 koi carps. He is really generous. If I arrange for him to work in the household department in the future, I will have to remind him from time to time that money cannot be spent like this. Wei Jian smiled and said, Master Tang is a truly wise man. I believe he must have his own intentions for doing this. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 460. Remember it in 1 second and read wonderful novels for free without pop-ups. After the group round robin, the 8 promoted teams will have a few days of rest, and then the competition for the top 4 will begin. The 8-4 knockout round is not drawn by lot, but based on the points in the group stage. The first place in Group A will play the second place in Group B, the first place in Group B will play the second place in Group C, and so on. Zhou Xiaoyi won 3 out of 3 games in the group stage and ranked first. Their opponent in the semi-finals was Group B's Yu Yinkawei. The strength of Yu Yinkawei is slightly better than that of their old rival Zhou Yinkawei, but it is not as good as the top 4. In the eyes of outsiders, Zhou Xiaoyi's battle is very suspenseful, but no matter what, it's better than playing against the right winger who is number 1 in Group B. This round of competition only started in a few days, but the major casinos in Beijing were already bustling with activity. At this moment, the gamblers who had not made a move in the group stage finally couldn't bear it anymore. Zhou Xiaoyi was lucky enough to advance. Their footsteps should end here, right? When they defeated Zhou Yinkawei in the last game, there were only 4 people left. They couldn't be the opponents of Yu Yinkawei. I bet on Yu Yinkawei. I'll also bet on Yu Yinkai guard. You all bet on Yinkawei on the right, and I'll bet on Xiaoyi on the left. You won't win much by betting on Yinkawei anyway, so why not give it a try? In the early years, the imperial court banned the opening of casinos. Later, it was discovered that there was no way to ban this kind of thing. The more it was banned, the more rampant underground black casinos would become. So they relaxed the supervision appropriately, but imposed heavy taxes and reduced the number of casinos to casinos. The number remains on the same line, and we will severely crack down on the establishment of private casinos without official approval. The promoted 8 guards can rest for a few days, and Tang Ning can also rest for a few days. In a room in the inner courtyard, Zhao Man sat on Tang Ning's lap, put her arms around his neck, and said, "Father will definitely not agree to let me marry you. How about we go to the western regions in a few years?" Tang Ning said, "The wind and sand in the western regions are strong. If you stay there for a long time, your skin will become rough." She couldn't bear the deterioration of her skin. Zhao Man thought for a while and then said, "Then let's go to Nanzhao. I heard the scenery there is good." Nanzhao is a general name in this world, and its location is probably in the Yunnan-Guizhou area in later generations. It was once the territory of the Liang Kingdom. Tang Ning pinched her nose and smiled. Nanzhao is full of mountains, and there are many poisonous insects that can bite people. Yes, are you sure you want to go? Zhao Man frowned and said, well, what about 11 Fan? Tang Ning said, 11 Fan is on the plateau. The air there is so thin that even water cannot be boiled. Moreover, it will be very difficult for us to breathe there. Zhao Man looked up at her, blinked and said, how come you know everything? Tang Ning hugged her, moved her position on his lap, and then said, you will know if you read more books. Zhao Man thought for a while and suddenly said, then let's go to Chu State, or go to the grassland. Wan Yanyan also said that she would teach me horse riding and archery. Tang Ning looked down at her and said, let's wait another 3 years. 3 years was the agreement between him and Lanlin, and he could be anywhere by then. During these 3 years, she had her dreams to realize, and Tang Ning also had her own things to do. To be precise, there were some debts that needed to be recovered. In the Tang family, Tang Zhao sneezed inexplicably, rubbed his nose, looked at Tang Jing aside, and asked, brother, are you going to the Prince of Dian's mansion tonight? It is said that there will be several beauties from the western regions tonight. Yes, the envoys from the small countries in the western regions who attended the ceremony this time brought. Tang Jing waved his hand and said, go ahead. Tang Zhao looked at him and said, then give me some money. I will use it tonight. Since Tang Ning came to Beijing, he has been unlucky and caused a lot of troubles. As a result, he is scolded by his father from time to time. He is also strictly disciplined on weekdays, and his monthly salary has been reduced to only 10 taels of silver. What can 10 taels of silver do? The rewards he gave to brothel girls before were all starting from 100 taels of silver notes. The king of Dian passed away more than 10 years ago. The crown prince of Dian was summoned to the capital at that time. He grew up in the capital. As a member of the royal family, he was occasionally entrusted with important tasks by His Majesty, such as receiving envoys from small countries. There were still some problems in the capital. Of status. Tang Jing took out a stack of banknotes and handed them to him, saying, don't cause trouble outside. Tang Zhao patted his chest and said, don't worry, I promise not to cause trouble. Because Chen Huang doubled their budget, Tang Ning spent the past 2 days asking for interest from Zhao Man. However, after careful calculation, she didn't know who suffered the loss and who took advantage. Anyway, she seemed quite happy and didn't seem to be at a loss at all. Qing'er knocked on the door outside and said, Uncle, Mr. Xiao is here. Zhao Man could go back to the princess mansion through the secret passage in this room. Tang Ning walked out of the room, walked through the inner courtyard, and came to the outer courtyard. Xiaoju was already waiting in the courtyard. He looked at Tang Ning and asked, are you going to the Dian prince's mansion tonight? Tang Ning asked, why are you going to Prince Dian's mansion? Xiaoju was surprised and said, didn't he give you an invitation? It shouldn't be. I think I did. Tang Ning didn't remember clearly. He often received invitations, but they were all from people he didn't know, so he rejected them all. He recalled that 2 days ago, Qing'er seemed to have said that someone named Prince Dian sent an invitation. Xiaoju looked at him and explained, the status of the Prince of Dian in Beijing is quite special. The King of Dian passed away a long time ago. He was brought to the capital by His Majesty when he was young. Some occasions require the royal family to appear, but it is not suitable for the princes, so only the Prince of Dian can attend. He has never relied on any prince and has friendships with many people in Beijing. Tang Ning looked at him and said, you still didn't say why we are going. There will be gambling at the prince's mansion tonight. Xiaoju looked at him and said, people with status in Beijing will not go to underground casinos. Such things are usually hosted by the Prince of Dian. Don't you want to gamble? No. Tang Ning waved his hand. He was an amateur in gambling, so he left the matter to the gambling god Tang Yao Yao. Tang Ning had never heard of anyone else who won nearly 1 million taels in a single bet. Xiaoju looked at him and continued, I heard that the Prince of Dian invited several envoys from small countries in the western regions tonight, and there will be beautiful women from the western regions. Don't you want to go and see them? Tang Ning shook his head, no. Western beauties are not common in Chen State. Many of them have high noses, deep eye sockets, distinct facial features, and look similar to Europeans. In the eyes of Chen people, they are quite exotic, so many people are interested in them. It is undeniable that Tang Ning also thinks they are beautiful. Even in later generations, people have always thought that Xinjiang is rich in beauties. Among the first-line actresses, there are also some popular flowers full of exotic styles. But he still prefers traditional Han beauties. Speaking of exoticism, Tang Shui also has this trait. Her facial features are deeper and clearer than other women Tang Ning knows, but not so obvious. In Tang Ning's eyes, she is much more beautiful than those Western beauties. He looked at Xiaoju and said casually, although Western women are beautiful, they also age faster than Han women. After the age of 30, their figures and appearances will change greatly. Xiaoju thought about it and found that many Western concubines of wealthy families in Beijing seemed to be abandoned because of old age and fading beauty. He was surprised and said, you know all this. Tang Ning looked at him and said, read more books, these books are all there. Xiaoju was surprised and said, books also talk about these, what books are you reading? Tang Ning patted his shoulder and said, in short, just read more. In fact, this is recorded in a secret book given to him by the old beggar. The secret book not only records a kind of dual cultivation martial arts, but also makes some judgments on women from all over the country, and the women in the pictures are not wearing clothes. Xiaoju looked at him and asked, are you really not going? Tang Ning waved his hand, no. Miss Su is going too, are you going? When are you leaving? Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 461. Remember it in 1 second and read wonderful novels for free without pop-ups. Tang Ning is not an unprincipled person and will not change the bottom line casually. Mainly because Xiaoju said that the Prince of Dian had a wide circle of friends and could be called the male version of Princess Anyang in the capital. He was another social butterfly in the capital and was also the largest black manor in the capital. He had to wait and see to see the upper-class circles in the capital. What do people bet on? He told Qing'er to dig out the invitation, change his clothes, and plan to go to the meeting in the evening. When he was studying the invitation carefully, Xiaoju came over and asked, are you sure Zhou Xiaoyi can win the first place? Tang Ning asked, why, are you worried about losing money? That's not true. Xiaoju shook his head and said, Lu Ding said that I can only marry his daughter when I become a general. If Zhou Xiaoyi can win the first place this time, His Majesty will have to grant me the title. If you become a general, you can be promoted to a general next year. If I have a chance, I will lead my troops to the grassland and kill some barbarians. When I come back, I can be promoted to a general. The emperor's brother-in-law is very powerful. Promotion is the same as playing. As a junior captain, Xiaoju is now starting to plan the steps to become a general. A captain in the 16th Guards who has no background may not be able to sit in that position in his life. Don't worry, he looked at Xiaoju and said, I still want to be a lieutenant general for fun. That's good. Xiaoju looked at the sky and said, it's getting late, let's go. Tang Ning walked out of the door and said casually, what if you still can't become a cavalry general in 2 years? If you still can't be, let's cook the rice first. Xiaoju said indifferently, when the time comes, can Lu Ding be able to stop him? Tang Ning looked at him in surprise. It seemed that Xiaoju had not only physically transformed into a man, but had also begun to learn to solve things in a man's way. The prince's mansion of Prince Dian is located in the east of the city. This is the gathering place for the princes and nobles in the capital. When Tang Ning and Xiaoju got there, many people had already arrived. They met Lu Jun and Mu Yu on the road. When they walked to the door of the mansion, they met another person. Tang Ning remembered that he seemed to be Colonel Zhou Yinkai. Called Chen Chuan. Zhou Yinkai lost to Zhou Xiaoyi and almost came back to win. Chen Chuan was obviously dissatisfied with Xiaoju and ignored him. He just raised his hand to Tang Ning and said, "Master Tang." Colonel Chen Tang Ning also returned the greeting, but she looked at the person behind him and asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" Chen Chuan looked behind him, then looked at Tang Ning again, and asked in surprise, "Does Master Tang know Chen Zhou?" Tang Ning naturally knew Chen Zhou and had a very good impression on him. It was difficult to find a subordinate with both skills and eyes like him. He also planned to recruit him from Lu Teng after he was promoted to Zhou Xiaoyi Zhonglang General. Lu Teng would not refuse to give him this little face. Chen Chuan didn't wait for Tang Ning to answer, and suddenly said, "I almost forgot, Mr. Tang is the wedding messenger." After he finished speaking, he pointed at Chen Zhou and said, "He is a descendant of my Chen family. I brought him here to see the world." Chen Zhou stepped forward, cupped his hands and said, "Master Tang." Tang Ning looked at the two of them. The names of the Chen family were really strange. One was a shipwreck and the other was a shipwreck. No wonder he felt familiar when he first saw Captain Chen Chuan. After Chen Chuan and Chen Zhou went in first, Xiaoju and Tang Ning also walked into the prince's mansion. Xiaoju looked around and suddenly pointed in a certain direction and said, "Isn't that Tang Zhao? It is said that he has been restricted from pocket money. It has become a joke in the capital to go to a brothel on credit. I think he must take a gamble tonight, otherwise he will not even have the money to visit the brothel." In fact, Xiaoju himself is the joke of the capital, but compared with Tang Zhao, he is still far behind. Many people in the capital and even the people of Chen State don't know who Tang Hui Tang Qi is, but they all know that Tang Zhao came from the Tang family. He is a prototype of a villain in the Romance of the West Chamber and the Peony Pavilion, a dandy in the capital, a scum, a scum. Thousands of years later, not to mention the Tang family, even the Chen kingdom was gone, but Tang Zhao could still be famous. The banquet at the prince's mansion was held in the open-air garden. Although it was night, there were many lanterns hanging around the garden, which was extremely bright. Although it would still have some impact on visibility at night, it also created a private atmosphere. Brother Xiao, a figure, came from the front and said hello to Xiaoju. Then he looked at Tang Ning and asked in surprise, "Is this Mr. Tang?" When Tang Ning attended Princess Anyang's banquet for the first time, she met the Prince of Dian. She raised her hand and said, "Your Highness." A rare guest indeed." The Crown Prince of Dian looked at him and said, "I have invited you dozens if not dozens of times, and I finally got you this time." Tang Ning said sheepishly, "I'm busy with official duties on weekdays." "Your Highness, please forgive me." The Crown Prince of Dian said, "Master Tang is your Majesty's most valued minister, so it is appropriate to be busy." He exchanged pleasantries with Tang Ning and Xiaoju and said with a smile, "I still have a few guests to entertain. There will be fine wine and cakes in front of you. You too can help yourself." The banquet in the prince's mansion is quite casual. In addition to the purpose of making friends, the most important thing about this banquet is to set up a gambling game, gambling and whoring. For these young princes in the capital, it is commonplace. The two found a place to sit down. Not long after, the Crown Prince of Dian came from the front, looked at everyone, and said with a smile, "Tonight, I specially invited Miss Su to play a song for everyone. Miss Su's folk art topping the capital, everyone's ears are lucky. Miss Su. I can actually hear Miss Su playing, tonight is really not in vain. I was lucky enough to hear Miss Su's piano music once, and I still recall it. As soon as the Prince of Dian finished speaking, the venue was noisy for a while, and then immediately became silent. A graceful figure walked from the front, her face covered with gauze, and her face was even more difficult to see under the dim light. Even so, it did not affect the charm she exuded that could drive men crazy. Su Mei's piano music is different from her soul-stirring xiaosheng. It is clearer and more melodious. It is really a pleasure to listen to it. But the atmosphere tonight is wrong. There are too many people and there is no artistic conception. Until tomorrow, Tang Ning must listen to it alone. She plays a song. After the song ended, the venue was quiet for a long time, and then there was a burst of applause. "Thank you for your hard work, Monsieur." The Crown Prince of Dian stepped forward, stretched out his hand to press down, and said something to Su Mei. Then he turned to look at the crowd and said, "I have invited some beauties from the western regions tonight. Everyone, you might as well take a good look at the differences between this woman from the western region and me, a Han woman, and please wait a moment and move into the palace." From what the Prince of Dian said, there seemed to be an entertainment show brought by several beauties from the western regions. Tang Ning took a sip of tea and inadvertently turned her eyes to see a figure hidden behind the shadow of a tree. He glanced away, looked at Xiaoju, and asked, "Which guard will Zhou Xiaoyi compete with in the next match?" Xiaoju was stunned and said, "You forgot, Zhou Xiaoyi's next opponent is Yu Yinkawei." Tang Ning looked at him and said, "I will bet 10,000 taels of silver on Zhou Xiaoyi and lose." "What?" Xiaoju was startled, looked at him, and asked, "Are you crazy?" Tang Ning gave him a look and said, "Losing is much easier than winning. We will share the money we make equally." Xiaoju looked at him, glanced to the side, then quickly moved back, nodded and said, "It's a deal." The figure behind the tree shadow was startled, then slowly stepped away, came to a certain location, looked at a person and asked, "Did you just bet on who would win between Zhou Xiaoyi and Yu Yinkawei?" Ling Feng looked at him and said, "Zhou Xiaoyi, my father said that Zhou Xiaoyi has been poor in the past few competitions. Yu Yinkawei is not their opponent at all. Those who bet on Zhou Xiaoyi's loss are all fools." Tang Zhao's expression changed, he looked at him and said, "Listen to me, buy Yinkawei to win the next game." "Are you crazy?" Ling Feng looked at him and said, "Aren't you very short of money? You said Zhou Xiaoyi is stronger, but you still dare to buy Yinkawei. There's something shady about this competition." Tang Zhao looked somewhere behind him, turned his head, and said, "You're a brother, just trust me."